Welcome to this series from Profitwyse Academy on the Introduction to Excel. This is a series that is going to be basically set for beginners or newbies to Excel, and in this first video we're going to be talking about navigating the Excel user interface. Here is the Excel user interface in all its glory, but before we get into the details, I just wanted to run through a little bit of the history of spreadsheets so that you kind of know where we've been and how we kind of got to where we are today. But basically, before the advent of personal computers, generally accountants would use paper columnar worksheets such as this to write down all their journal entries and calculations, as well as doing forecasting, all with a pencil and an eraser, which, as you can imagine, was rather cumbersome. But you can see, if you look closely, that even way back when, the columns had numbers as well as the rows having numbers, which is very similar to our Excel sheet today. Moving forward to the very late 70s, early 80s, Apple IIs came onto the market, and they needed an application, at least for business users, that would really help them begin to take market share. And that application was something called VisiCalc. And VisiCalc was really the very first computer spreadsheet, and it really did make Apple II computers very popular in a business environment because people were able to quickly move off of those columnar paper worksheets and begin to put things into computers and really leverage their data. Not that it was particularly noteworthy relative to market share, but following VisiCalc was Microsoft's first entry into the spreadsheet world, which was with something called Multiplan. Now with Multiplan, this was a system that was really designed for the smaller 8-bit machines that were prevalent at the time, although 16-bit machines like the IBM PC were just beginning to come onto the market, and that was probably what really sank this product for Microsoft. But they did have this product, and this is, you could say, a predecessor to Excel. Once the IBM PC became popular, it was the first real powerful 16-bit machine that everybody was purchasing in businesses, because no IT manager ever got fired for buying an IBM computer. And the company that developed Lotus 123 really became the killer app on the IBM PC for business. And it really was a very powerful tool at the time, much more so than Multiplan and VisiCalc. You can even see here that it basically had spreadsheet capability and graphics and a simple database system. And you could do some simple programming with the macro language that they had at the time, which was significant. There were a number of other competitors in the market, such as Quattro Pro, but in the mid to later 80s, Excel was working with Apple, or I should say Microsoft was working with Apple, and they developed Excel for the Macintosh, and then they quickly developed a version that followed for DOS/Windows machines that you can see here. And that's when Excel really began to take off. As Windows took off, so did Excel. Actually, what really caused Excel to take off was the fact that Microsoft was bundling with Excel Word and PowerPoint and several other applications, so that you only needed to pay for the Office suite and you got all these tools, which was a lot cheaper than purchasing Lotus 123 and then a word processing system like Word, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was really how Microsoft began to take off. Sorry for the diversion, but I thought that might be a little bit helpful. And I've included some links down below if you want to learn more. Let's just quickly go through the major screen components here in the Excel interface. The first one is the quick access bar, which is up here at the top left. You can customize this by clicking down on this little icon right here, so you can add or delete different things that you can get to quickly. Certainly I would recommend undo and do, as well as new file, and the printing, quick print, print and preview are used a lot, but this is the way to get to those quickly without having to navigate around to do a lot of other machinations. Next is the tabs, the tab row, which is here, and this can change depending on whether you have certain add-ins. I have a couple, the developer and Power Pivot are two add-ins that you will not see when you first fire up your Excel application. Those have been added in by me, and as we go along I'll show you how to do that. Next is the ribbon. So that is the part here directly below the tabs. Now right now you can see how it's got this highlighted line underneath home. So as I click through the tabs, you can see how the ribbon changes to bring in new functionality. If for whatever reason you wanted more real estate on the spreadsheet down here, you can make this ribbon go away by clicking here, and then it allows a little bit more visibility here in the space, especially if you're on a laptop and you want to be able to see more. If you want to bring it back to having the ribbon visible all the time, just click on one of the tabs and click on this little thumbtack over here, and then that will lock that down. Next is the formula bar. So if you click in here, this is where you can put in formulas to do different calculations, whatever you want to do here. A lot more to be talked about this, but this is the formula bar. Note that the way that I have my formula bar set up is not the default. Normally the default is to edit in the cells. I'll talk about that more later. Next is the cell selector. So up here, this is the cell selector. It's telling you what cell you're in. This is used for a lot of other things, but you will learn later other ways that is used. Now, one thing to note is that here, while I'm on this one cell, you can see that I have this address up here. So if I do this, I'm now selecting a range by holding down the left button on my mouse, and it's telling me that I have 8 rows and 6 columns. Once you go beyond a certain size, you can see down here that it starts to give you what the size of the range is that you have selected over here at the bottom right. Next, we have the rows addressed over here on the left, and they're numerically addressed, and then the columns or the headers are alphabetically addressed up here at the top. If I do a control right arrow, you can see that this goes all the way out to column XFD. That is 16,383 columns. I mean, if you're planning on using anything close to that number of columns, probably Excel is not the right application for you. But going down, you can see down here, you can get down to 1,048,576 columns or rows. Again, if you're using that many rows and columns, you should be using a database, not this application. Down below, you have sheet tabs. So right now, this just has one sheet tab. If you wanted to, say, add a sheet tab, you would just right click and you can insert another sheet tab right there. And you can name them if you wanted to. You can give them their own names, but basically these are new sheet tabs. Down below, this is the status bar down here. Kind of the thing that you'll probably use a lot down here is going to be expanding or contracting the screens for more or less columns and rows. And then also you'll find out, say, if you have a series of numbers here, and if I highlight these numbers, it will tell me that the average of those numbers is 2. I have 3 items, and the sum total is 6. And if you right-click on that, you can bring up more functionality down here in the status bar relative to simple calculations. And then finally, you have the document views here. So we're on normal view, page layout. We haven't set up any page layout, but I mean, if you did, it would show up here. And then finally, this page break review. So this just allows you to get a better understanding of how your spreadsheet is set up to print. And those are just some of the basic functionality of the Excel interface.